Imagine eating the same meal every day, cold beans, hard cornbread and watered-down juice, then waiting 16 hours before you eat again. That's daily life inside some of America's toughest prisons. Could you survive on that? Before we take you deep inside Angola and Rikers Island, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let's find out what 3 meals a day really means when you're behind bars. In the heart of rural Louisiana, the Louisiana State Penitentiary, better known as Angola Prison, stretches across 18,000 acres of farmland once worked by enslaved people. But for the men locked inside, the vastness of Angola offers little comfort. Meals here are as predictable as the sunrise, and just as unforgiving. At 4:30 a.m., the first meal of the day begins. The yard is still dark, the air heavy with humidity, and correctional officers march rows of men toward the chow hall. The sound of clanging metal trays echoes off concrete walls. Breakfast often means grits, a small biscuit and a spoonful of beans, no sugar, no butter, no flavor. For protein? Maybe a boiled egg if the week's budget allows. Lunch follows by 10:30 a.m., and dinner hits trays before most people outside have even thought about their evening commute, around 3:30 p.m. After that, the kitchen shuts down. No snacks. No vending machines. No late-night meals. Just an empty stomach and another long night inside a cell. Former inmates have told the Times-Picayune that by sundown, hunger gnaws at them so intensely it becomes hard to sleep. Some men save a slice of cornbread from lunch and hide it under their mattress, risking discipline if caught. Others crush leftover beans into a makeshift spread, mixing them with commissary noodles and chips to create anything with flavor. During budget shortfalls, meat vanished from the menu entirely. In its place came soy patties and starch-heavy substitutes that looked like meat but tasted like cardboard. It wasn't just unpleasant, it was unhealthy. Reports surfaced of inmates losing significant weight, their skin turning pale from lack of nutrients. One man recalled, "After a few months your body adjusts. But your mind doesn't." At Rikers Island, across the country in New York City, the story isn't much different, only colder and more chaotic. Rikers is notorious for its constant unrest, overcrowding and food that inmates describe as barely edible. The menu rotates through bologna sandwiches, mystery stews and spoiled milk, often handed out hours after being prepared. Some inmates report that milk cartons were sometimes days past expiration, yet still served. The 2012 Board of Correction report described how ramen noodles became the secondary currency of Rikers. Inmates would trade them for favors, protection, or even hygiene items. A pack that costs less than $1 outside could be worth several inside. "It's not just food," said one former detainee. "It's survival. When a man goes hungry in prison, it's not just about food, it's about control. The institution decides when you eat, what you eat, and how much you get. Refusing a meal can be seen as a sign of rebellion. Accepting it, even when it's cold or rotten, becomes part of staying invisible." Some prisoners took drastic steps to protest. At Rikers, hunger strikes broke out over food quality and sanitation. Inmates demanded fresh vegetables and safe water, accusing kitchen staff of serving spoiled or contaminated meals. City officials denied intentional neglect, but investigations revealed patterns of underfunding, mismanagement, and contractor errors. In Angola, a lawsuit in the late 1990s brought attention to similar issues, alleging that the prison's meal system failed to meet basic human nutrition standards. Though the state argued that all meals met minimum caloric requirements, prisoners argued the truth: calories didn't equal dignity. Inside both facilities, meals are more than sustenance. They're a daily reminder that your body, like your freedom, belongs to someone else. And yet, amid the hunger, creativity thrives. Inmates become resourceful chefs. They learn to cook using plastic bags, hot water, and imagination. Ramen noodles mixed with crushed chips and peanut butter become prison pad thai. Some mix Kool-Aid with toothpaste to make candy. It's a bizarre, improvised cuisine, one born from desperation. But here's the haunting question. If you were locked inside Angola or Rikers, would you make it through a month on their food? Or would hunger become your hardest sentence? Inside prison walls, food isn't just a necessity, it's power. It's the one thing every inmate depends on, and the one thing authorities can easily control. Across America, prison kitchens have quietly become instruments of discipline, coercion, and survival. From Angola's soy patties to Rikers Island's spoiled sandwiches, food has been used to reward obedience and punish defiance. In Louisiana's Angola prison, the cycle is predictable. Men who keep their heads down, no fights, no contraband, no complaints, might get a slightly better serving. a scoop of beans with meat or a thicker slice of cornbread. But those who break rules? They often find themselves on restricted diets, stripped of flavor and nutrients. Some former inmates call it starvation by paperwork. Not torture in the traditional sense, but a slow, grinding hunger meant to remind you of your place in the system. During lockdowns or disciplinary actions, meals are often served cold and hastily through food slots. You'd get what they call the punishment tray, one Angola inmate said in a 2005 interview. Half a scoop of beans, a dry biscuit, and water. That's it. Do that for a week and you'll eat your own thoughts. But nowhere is the link between food and punishment more controversial than with something called the Nutraloaf. Across several U.S. states, including New York, Illinois, and California, this loaf became infamous as a disciplinary meal. Designed to meet basic nutritional standards, it's a dense, brown, unappetizing brick made from whatever's available in the kitchen. Vegetables, meat, flour, and even leftovers, all blended and baked into one tasteless mass. It's technically food, but many argue it's a form of psychological punishment. At Rikers Island, Nutraloaf was once standard punishment for inmates who threw food, assaulted staff, or refused to obey orders. It was called disciplinary loaf or food loaf. Reports describe it as dry, chalky, and nearly impossible to swallow. Some inmates compared it to dog food. One said, "They make you eat it with your hands, no utensils, no seasonings. After 2 days your stomach hurts so bad you'll eat it just to stop the pain." In 2015, after multiple lawsuits and human rights complaints, New York City banned Nutraloaf from Rikers. But in other states it quietly continues. Courts have ruled it constitutional, as long as it meets minimum calorie requirements. To the men who have eaten it, that's a technicality that misses the point entirely. Hunger strikes, on the other hand, flip the script. They take that control away. In 2013, more than 30,000 inmates across California joined one of the largest hunger strikes in U.S. history. The protest began inside Pelican Bay's security housing unit, where inmates were held in solitary confinement for years, sometimes decades. But the message reached far beyond those cells. Food had become the only voice left for men who were otherwise invisible. Inside Rikers, hunger strikes have erupted repeatedly, especially when food conditions worsen. Inmates have refused trays, dumped meals into toilets, or written letters to the Board of Correction describing moldy bread, expired milk, and roaches crawling in the kitchen. A 2021 inspection revealed that some facilities failed to maintain safe temperatures during food storage, allowing bacteria to spread. Yet, the reports rarely reached public view. The meals continued. At Angola, the situation carries a darker layer. The prison runs its own farm operations, producing crops and livestock that sometimes end up in other state facilities. Yet, inmates working those fields rarely benefit from what they grow. They might spend 10 hours under the Louisiana sun harvesting vegetables, only to return to the chow hall and be served canned peas and soy loaf. It's a cruel irony. The same hands that feed the system remain hungry. The psychological effect of hunger is profound. Inside prison, time already moves differently, slow, repetitive, and hollow. Add hunger to that and the days stretch endlessly. Meals become more than nourishment, they're markers of survival. Every spoonful of beans or soggy rice becomes a small victory. When those meals disappear or degrade, morale collapses. Tension rises. Violence follows. Prison staff know this. Many former correctional officers admit that meal schedules are sometimes adjusted deliberately during disturbances, to keep control. Skip a meal here, delay another there, it keeps inmates unsettled. "It's a management tactic," said one retired officer. "You can't fight if you're weak." Inmates, however, adapt in remarkable ways. They build microeconomies around food. At Rikers, a bag of ramen can buy protection. At Angola, a spoonful of peanut butter might settle a debt. Inmates turn scarcity into strategy. They learn to cook, to barter, to share, or to hoard. One Angola inmate once said, "We make the best out of nothing. You'd be amazed what we can create from crumbs." A plastic spoon becomes a chef's tool. A hidden stash of instant noodles becomes a lifeline. But beneath the creativity and resilience lies a harsher truth. When food becomes punishment, hunger becomes part of the sentence. And for some, the real question isn't, could you survive prison food? It's, could you survive being controlled by it? For most people, eating is automatic. 3 meals a day, snacks in between, and the comfort of choosing what you want. But for many who have lived behind bars, food never feels the same again. The hunger, the control, the repetition. It rewires the mind. Inside prisons like Angola and Rikers Island, that transformation begins quietly, one meal at a time. Nutritionists who've studied U.S. prison systems say that many inmates survive on 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day, barely enough for physically active men, especially those working in field labor or kitchen detail. But it's not just the calories that matter, it's what those calories are made of. Cheap carbohydrates, processed soy, sugar, and sodium fill the menus. Fresh vegetables and lean proteins are rare, often replaced by canned or powdered substitutes. In some states, even powdered milk has become standard because it's cheaper and lasts longer. The consequences show up fast. Former inmates describe sudden weight loss, chronic fatigue, hair thinning, and dental problems. Others develop high blood pressure, diabetes, and digestive issues, not because they were overfed, but because the meals were so nutritionally unbalanced. One Angola prisoner recalled, "We'd get so much starch and salt your body swelled up. You're full but you're starving." Medical studies back those claims. A 2018 report by the American Journal of Public Health found that incarcerated people are more likely to suffer from hypertension and metabolic disorders, often linked to poor diets in prison. The problem is compounded when commissary foods, usually high in sodium and fat, become the only way to feel satisfied. It's a cruel loop. Prison meals make you weak, but the only alternative makes you sick. At Rikers Island, nutritionists found that ramen noodles, chips, and candy from commissary made up to 40% of some inmates' total diet. The reason? It's easy to store, cheap to trade, and tastes better than the state-provided food. But there's a cost, physically and psychologically. Food in prison becomes emotional currency. It replaces comfort, choice, and even friendship. When someone shares a ramen packet or half a honey bun, it's more than kindness, it's trust. When someone steals food, it's betrayal. And when someone hoards, it's fear. The deprivation doesn't end with release. Former prisoners often struggle with disordered eating long after freedom. Some can't throw food away no matter how spoiled. Others overeat because the memory of hunger lingers like a ghost. A 2020 study from the Urban Institute found that ex-prisoners are nearly twice as likely to experience food insecurity compared to the general population. One man who served 10 years at Angola said, "For the first few months after I got out, I ate like I'd never see food again. I'd wake up at night and go to the kitchen just to check if there was still something to eat." It's like your body doesn't believe you're free yet. For women in prison, the effects can be even more severe. Many female inmates suffer from anemia or calcium deficiency due to inadequate diets, especially during pregnancy. At New York's Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, advocates have long called for better prenatal nutrition after reports showed mothers giving birth undernourished, with babies below healthy weight. But hunger isn't just physical. It's psychological. Inside prison, control over food is control over the body, and the body is all a person has left. When you can't decide when or what to eat, you lose one of the most basic forms of human autonomy. Over time, that erodes dignity. It teaches submission. It teaches silence. Yet, in the bleakest corners of Angola or the chaos of Rikers, some inmates resist that silence. They turn mealtime into a ritual of resilience. One group of men in Angola's Camp D began holding spread nights. Each person would contribute something small from commissary: noodles, chips, tuna, even pickles. They'd mix it all in a trash bag, divide it equally, and eat together. It wasn't gourmet, but it was freedom, a moment of equality in a place designed to take that away. These shared meals became symbols of survival. They weren't about taste, they were about unity. About saying, "We're still here." Across America, reform advocates continue to fight for better prison nutrition, calling for fresh produce, adequate protein, and oversight of private food contractors. Some progress has been made, especially after lawsuits and public scrutiny. But in many places, meals remain as bleak as ever: gray trays filled with processed starch, a spoonful of canned peas, and a silent expectation: eat it or stay hungry. Because in prison, food is never just food. It's the measure of your humanity. So, if you ever wonder, could you handle this diet? Remember, it's not just about surviving the meals. It's about surviving what the meals mean. Inside the walls of America's toughest prisons, where hunger meets ingenuity, food becomes the foundation of an entire underground economy. Every crumb, every instant noodle packet, every spoonful of peanut butter has value. And in places like Angola Prison in Louisiana and Rikers Island in New York, food isn't just about staying alive, it's about staying in control. When official meals fail to satisfy, inmates turn to what they call the hustle. It starts small. A man trades his cornbread for another's milk, or a scoop of beans for a pack of ramen. But over time, These tiny exchanges evolve into a black market system as complex as any economy outside. At Rikers Island, ramen noodles became the unofficial currency of survival. The New York Board of Correction once noted that ramen had replaced cigarettes as the most traded commodity inside the jail. A single pack could buy you almost anything: protection, favors, or even a haircut. 5 packs could buy you an entire cooked spread. 10 could get you peace from someone you owed. One former Rikers inmate described it perfectly. Ramen is golden here. You can't eat money, but you can eat noodles. At Angola Prison, the trade runs deeper. Because many inmates work in field labor or maintenance jobs, some earn access to commissary funds or limited privileges. They use those small earnings to buy items like sugar, peanut butter, or instant coffee, and those items become bargaining chips. The men who control the commissary flow often hold real influence in their dorms. In a world without cash, control of food is control of power. But not all trade is friendly. The darker side of this economy thrives on debt and intimidation. An inmate might borrow a pack of noodles, promising to repay too. If he fails, violence follows. In some prisons, these debts turn into what officers call food taxes, protection fees disguised as generosity. One Angola inmate told The Advocate, "You start with a debt over a honey bun, and next thing you're getting jumped over a cookie." Food debts can spiral into gang control. Prison gangs often regulate the internal trade, setting prices, deciding who can sell, and enforcing repayment with brutal precision. In Rikers, correctional officers have found makeshift ledgers, handwritten lists tracking who owes what. The debts might seem small, a soup here, a sandwich there, but to the people inside it's survival currency. Missing a payment can mean losing more than your meal. Still, amidst the danger, there's creativity. Inmates have turned their cells into makeshift kitchens. With nothing but plastic bags, hot water, and scavenged utensils, they transform commissary items into complex recipes. They call them spreads, communal dishes cooked and shared among trusted cellmates or friends. A typical spread might include crushed chips, noodles, tuna, beans, chili powder, and mayonnaise, all mixed together in a bag until it forms a thick, flavorful mash. Others go further, baking cakes with crushed cookies, Kool-Aid powder, and melted candy bars. They even make prison pizzas, flattening crackers into dough and topping it with ketchup, beef sticks, and cheese from squeeze packs. One Angola inmate laughed as he explained, "It's not 5-star dining, but it's 5-star freedom. You can't taste that on the outside." But these food creations do more than satisfy hunger. They create community. Sharing a meal inside prison carries deep meaning. It builds alliances, repairs trust, and sometimes prevents conflict. Even rival groups have been known to share peace spreads, informal truces sealed with shared food. Food also becomes a form of therapy. When everything else in life is controlled, from wake-up time to lights out, cooking gives inmates back a small piece of autonomy. It's a ritual, a reminder of life before incarceration. One former inmate who served 15 years at Angola said, "When you make food in here, it's like you're free for that moment. It's you, your people, and your recipe. That's power." However, the underground food economy also exposes the failures of the official one. When inmates must trade, cook, and risk punishment just to eat something decent, it reveals how broken the system is. Some prisons have tried to shut down inmate cooking entirely, banning certain items or confiscating food made outside the chow hall. But hunger always finds a way. They hide their cooking bags inside trash bins, cook near hot pipes, or use the heat from fluorescent lights to warm up meals. And while officers might view it as contraband, to many prisoners, this underground economy represents survival, and sometimes dignity. At Rikers, a former inmate summarized it best. "They control the meals. We control what we make out of them. That's how you stay human." Inside Angola, one man described how he once saved half his cornbread from breakfast every day for a week just to make a cake on his friend's birthday. He said, "We don't got candles. We don't got frosting. But we got each other. And that's enough." These acts, small as they seem, speak volumes about resilience in a place designed to break it. Behind bars, food is no longer just sustenance. It's rebellion. It's business. It's brotherhood. It's survival. And sometimes, it's the only thing that reminds them they're still alive. Behind every tray of beans, every spoon of soy loaf, and every pack of ramen traded on the inside, there's a powerful machine operating on the outside. It's not just about punishment anymore. It's about profit. The business of feeding America's 2 million prisoners is worth billions of dollars, and at the heart of it lies a disturbing truth. The cheaper the meal, the higher the profit. When most people think of prison meals, they imagine kitchens run by the state, staff in white aprons, food prepared on-site, and government oversight ensuring fairness. But in reality, much of America's prison food system has been outsourced to private corporations. Companies like Aramark, Trinity Services Group, and Summit Food Service hold lucrative contracts to feed entire state prison systems, county jails, and detention centers. Their job is simple: feed thousands of inmates as cheaply as possible. And the lower the cost per meal, the better their bottom line. At Angola Prison, Louisiana's Department of Corrections spends roughly $1.67 per inmate per day on food, less than the cost of a single fast food cheeseburger. That means breakfast, lunch, and dinner combined must fit within that budget. To cut corners, the menu leans heavily on starches, soy fillers, and canned vegetables with minimal meat. Inmates joke that the soy patties taste like wet cardboard, but the system calls it efficiency. In 2014, Aramark made headlines after being fined in multiple states for serving food that was spoiled, infested with maggots, or tampered with by staff. In Michigan, inspectors found food stored at unsafe temperatures and kitchen workers reusing leftover meat from previous meals. The scandal triggered public outrage, but inside the prisons, inmates said nothing really changed, just the name of the contractor on the invoice. At Rikers Island, food services have cycled through multiple private vendors, each promising reform, each accused of the same neglect. Inmates complained of finding hair, insects, or plastic in their meals. Others said the trays arrived cold after sitting in transport bins for hours. In a 2019 city report, inspectors discovered that the facility was routinely understaffed, forcing untrained detainees to prepare hundreds of meals with little supervision. Why does it happen? Because every system that feeds on mass incarceration eventually learns the same rule: the less you spend on inmates, the more you make from them. Private food contracts are typically awarded through low-bid competitions. The company that promises to feed inmates for the least amount of money usually wins. That might sound cost-effective for taxpayers, but it comes at a price. The lower the bid, the lower the quality. To stay profitable, suppliers buy the cheapest ingredients possible: expired produce, surplus soy, bulk starches, and processed substitutes. For many inmates, these aren't just meals, they're experiments in corporate cost-cutting. Even commissaries, the only source of choice for inmates, are often controlled by these same corporations. The same company that sells the state its bulk soy patties might also sell inmates their ramen noodles, chips, and candy at inflated prices. A bag of ramen that costs 30 cents at Walmart can sell for $1.20 inside. Instant coffee, tuna pouches, and candy bars are marked up 3, sometimes 4 times their retail value. The result? A system where the poorest inmates stay hungry while the companies feeding them grow richer. It's not just about food, it's about control over supply chains. When an inmate complains about the quality of meals, they're often told to buy from commissary. But commissary profits flow right back to the contractors or correctional agencies themselves. It's a closed loop of dependency, one that traps both the eater and the system in mutual exploitation. The human toll of these profit-driven meals goes far beyond hunger. Inmates develop health issues from poor nutrition, conditions that require medical treatment, which costs the state even more. But because healthcare inside prisons is often privatized too, the same system that feeds inmates poorly ends up profiting again when they fall ill. It's a vicious cycle: starve them cheaply, treat them expensively. And for prisons like Angola, where inmates work on massive agricultural farms, the contradiction runs even deeper. The prison produces vegetables, beef, and soybeans on its own land, yet inmates often don't get to eat what they grow. Instead, the produce is sold to state agencies or contractors for profit, while prisoners eat from cans and bags. One former Angola field worker told the Times-Picayune, "We'd harvest fresh okra and corn all day, then get served canned peas at night. You can smell the difference, but you can't taste it." At Rikers, the same paradox exists in the city's massive food contracts. Millions of taxpayer dollars go toward feeding detainees, yet reports continue to document missing ingredients, poor sanitation, and mismanagement. The profit motive always finds a way to swallow accountability. Reform advocates argue that feeding inmates decently isn't a luxury, it's a moral obligation. But whenever budgets tighten, food is one of the first corners cut. Because to the system, hunger doesn't vote. Hunger doesn't file complaints. Hunger doesn't make noise until it erupts. And it does erupt. Through riots, hunger strikes, and lawsuits, inmates have forced the public to confront what's happening behind those kitchen doors. But change comes slowly, if at all. For every reform victory, another contract gets signed somewhere else, with the same promises, the same low bids, the same quiet suffering. As one former Angola guard put it, They say prison food isn't meant to be good. I say it isn't meant to be human. So the question remains, in a country that spends billions to incarcerate but pennies to feed, who really pays the price for keeping prisoners hungry? Hunger inside prison doesn't just live in the stomach, it crawls into the mind. Day after day of bland meals, strict schedules, and constant control over what you eat begins to reshape who you are. Over time, food, or the lack of it, becomes a form of silent domination. Inside Angola Prison, inmates say hunger is part of the discipline. Meals are early and light, leaving hours of emptiness before the next one. That emptiness teaches obedience. When you're hungry, one man said, you don't argue, you endure. The system counts on that. It uses food to train patience, to quiet resistance, to create dependence. At Rikers Island, hunger comes with humiliation. Men and women line up for trays they can't refuse and can't customize. The same tray, the same spoon, the same gray food. You eat fast because the guards say so, not because you're done. Psychologists call it institutional conditioning, when your body's most natural act becomes another reminder that you don't own yourself. The mind adapts, but not in healthy ways. Some inmates begin hoarding food, hiding bread under mattresses, or keeping cookies for later even when they're stale. Others stop eating altogether, choosing hunger as the only decision left to make. For some, it's rebellion, for others, despair. Studies show that food deprivation can increase aggression, anxiety, and depression. Inside a violent, crowded environment, that's a recipe for chaos. Prison counselors report fights breaking out over something as small as a muffin or a banana. Proof that hunger doesn't just weaken the body, it fuels survival instincts. And when inmates are released, that psychology doesn't fade. Many describe the world outside as overwhelming. Restaurants with too many choices, pantries full of options. Some eat compulsively. Some ration unnecessarily. Some can't eat at all without remembering the smell of prison beans or the silence of the chow hall. The mind may leave prison, but the hunger follows. Because prison hunger is not just about food, it's about control, loss, and the slow unlearning of freedom. What we call 3 meals a day, in prison isn't nourishment, it's management. For some, survival means swallowing whatever's on the tray. For others, it means fighting to taste freedom again, one meal at a time. If this story opened your eyes, hit like, share it, and subscribe for more real stories from behind the walls. Because understanding what they eat is understanding what we allow.